That's going.
Okay. First order of business. Now, well, let's that lip balm in a little tub of balm. Let's just be honest. Check. Yeah, why not? I'm really starting to think that this is just. Oh, come on, man. This whole operation's really, it's really starting to, it's literally coming apart at the seams. I put that up earlier thinking that was gonna hold. I got tub lip balm because my lip balm fell apart. Oh, what the fuck? Shit is this? I got chunks? And you can't see, I come into the garage through a side door right there. And right outside that side door, I'm in an apartment with a garage, the one garage space itself. And there's a bush, a pretty bush, it's flowering bush. It's got a lot of like pink flowers on it. It's very nice, and it like kind of is like a canopy over the little bit of sidewalk to get to the garage here. Just a nice, covering foliage with pink flowers, and there's a lot of leaves clumped up in it. And I thought, like, oh, it's because in the fall when it sheds leaves, they don't all fall out of it. And it's not. It's rats' nests. It's just nests of rats right outside that door. That I walk into this garage underneath a shroud of vermin. So I don't know how this whole thing can't come together even more, other than minor bad luck but rats. And there's a fly in here now that is it's fast. Like I'm doing the thing where I'll just sit still and try to see it. Like you can't see a fly if you're trying to see a fly, but you sit still, you check out of your vision, and then find it in the periphery. And I only know it's here by sound. Anyway, that's where I was going. This is just like this is starting to feel like Pump Up the Volume. How much is like when Pump Up the Volume was like, man, that movie's cool and Happy Harry Hard-On, what a rad dude. And now you're like, oh, that's just every incel on Reddit. What am I doing, a streaming comedy show? Hey, charity this week. I'd say a classic of causes. The AC/DC of causes. The Led Zeppelin of causes. Planned Parenthood. Brendan Kelly was on my other show called Hey Girl that I do with my buddy Matt Bronger on Friday nights. And Brendan Kelly of the Wandering Birds and the Falcon and Lawrence Arms decided to play for the charity of Planned Parenthood. That's a good one. If you don't think it's a good one and you're watching this and you're a fan of me, follow these fingers and fuck off. Dracula, Chapter 13. Ooh. Chapter 13. Dr. Seward's diary. Continued. I have no idea what happened last time. The funeral was arranged for the next succeeding day, so that Lucy and her mother might be buried together. Oh, I guess that happened. I guess the part where that lady with the cheeks and her mom who's sick both died on the same night. Whoops. I attended to all the ghastly formalities, and the urbane undertaker proved that his staff were afflicted or blessed with something of his own obsequious suavity. Even the woman who performed the last offices for the dead remarked to me in a confidential, brother professional way when she had come out from the death chamber. Jesus Christ. Chapter 13 starts like a chapter 13 should in a book about ghouls and demons. First two words, the funeral. Last two words, death chamber. That's how you write a paragraph in a scary book. It only took us 140 pages to get there. She makes a very beautiful corpse, sir. It's quite a privilege to attend on her. It's not too much to say that she will do credit to our establishment. God damn. Are you telling me that the undertaker was like, thanks for bringing us a hot dead chick? I noticed that Van Helsing never kept far away. This was possible from the disordered state of things in the household. There were no relatives at hand, and as Arthur had to be back the next day to attend his father's funeral, Jesus, we were unable to notify anyone who should have been bidden. Under the circumstances, Van Helsing and I took it upon ourselves to examine papers, etc. He insisted upon looking over Lucy's papers himself. I asked him why, for I feared that he, being a foreigner, might not be quite aware of English legal requirements, and so might in ignorance make some unnecessary trouble. He answered me, I know. You forget that I am a lawyer as well as a doctor. Get a load of this guy. But this is not altogether for the law. You knew that when you avoided the coroner. I have more than him to avoid. There may be papers more, such as this. As he spoke, he took from his pocketbook the memorandum which had been in Lucy's breast, and which she had torn in her sleep. Oh, yeah, that part. When you find anything of the solicitor who is for the late Mrs. Westenra, seal all her papers, and write him tonight. For me, I watch here in the room and in Miss Lucy's old room all night, and I myself search for what they may be. It is not well that her very thoughts go into the hands of strangers. I went on with my part of the work, and in another half hour had found the name and address of Miss Westenra's solicitor, and had written to him. All the poor lady's papers were in order. Explicit directions regarding the place of burial were given. I had hardly sealed the letter when, to my surprise, Van Helsing walked into the room, saying, Can I help you, friend John? I am free, and if I may, my service is to you. Have you got what you looked for, I asked, to which he replied, I did not look for any specific thing. I only hope to find, and find I have, all that there was. Only some letters and a few memoranda, and a diary new begun. But I have them here, and we shall for the present say nothing of them. I shall see that poor lad tomorrow evening, and with his sanction I shall use some. And when we had finished the work in hand, he said to me, And now, friend John, I think we made to bed. We want sleep, both you and I rest to recuperate. Tomorrow we shall have much to do, but for the tonight there is no need of us, alas. And you can really tell that at this point he's forgot that he decided to write this book in all journal entries or diary entries. Because that's not, like, that's just, can I say that's lazy to be like, you remember. It was like journal entries, but now I'm just writing like a regular book because the device I employed early on is too much of a pain in the ass. Before turning in, we went to look at poor Lucy. The undertaker had certainly done his work well, for the room was turned into a small chapelle ardente. Chapelle ardente. Probably more French. There was a wilderness of beautiful white flowers, and death was made as little repulsive as might be. The end of the winding sheet was laid over the face. When the professor bent over and turned it gently back, we both started at the beauty before us, the tall wax candles showing a sufficient light to note it well. All Lucy's loveliness had come back to her in death, and the hours that had passed, instead of leaving traces of decay's effacing fingers, had but restored the beauty of life, till positively I could not believe my eyes that I was looking at a corpse. The professor looked sternly grave. He had not loved her as I had, and there was no need for tears in his eyes. He said to me, Remain till I return, and left the room. He came back with a handful of wild garlic from the box waiting in the hall. Tell me you season this bitch right now. But which had not been opened. And placed the flowers amongst the others on or around the bed. I mean bitch because she's a woman. I just meant like you're about to throw garlic on a corpse. I'd say if you're about to throw garlic on a steak, I'd be like, season that bitch up right now. It's not a gender-based descriptor, noun, as assignment. I got stoned before this, and so that's why I'm not as free with my thoughts. Anyway, threw the garlic on her. Then he took from his neck, inside his collar, a little gold crucifix, and placed it over the mouth. He restored the sheet to its place, and we came away. I was undressing in my own room when, with a premonitory tap at the door, he entered, and at once began to speak. Tomorrow I want you to bring to me before night a set of post-mortem knives. Must we make an autopsy, I asked. Yes and no. I want to operate, but not as you think. Let me tell you now, but not a word to another. I want to cut off her head and take out her heart. Ah, you a surgeon, and so shocked. You, whom I have seen with no tremble of hand or heart, do operations of life or death that make the rest shudder. Oh, but I must not forget, my dear friend John, that you loved her, and I have not forgotten it, for it is that I shall operate, and you must only help. I would like to do it tonight, but for Arthur I must not. He will be free after his father's funeral tomorrow. Which dude is this? Dr. Seward's. He wants to do it tonight. Oh, but I can't because he will be free after his father's funeral tomorrow. And he will want to see her to see it. Then when she is coffined ready for the next day, you and I shall come when all sleep. We shall unscrew the coffin lid and do our operation. Then replace all so that no one knows, save we alone. Straight up grave digging. Groove diggers, man. That's got to be a surf band, right? But why do it at all? The girl is dead. Why mutilate her poor body without need? And if there is no necessity for a post-mortem and nothing to gain by it, no good to her, to us, to science, to human knowledge, why do it? With such it is monstrous. For answer, he put his hand on my shoulder and said with infinite tenderness, Friend John, I pity your poor bleeding heart, and I love you the more because it does so bleed. If I could, I would take it on myself, the burden that you do bear. But there are things you know not, but that you shall know, and bless me for knowing, though they are not pleasant things. That's a dumb sentence. John, my child, you have been my friend now many years, and yet did you ever know me to do anything without good cause? I may err, but I am but man. But I believe in all I do. Was it not for these causes that you sent for me when the great trouble came? Yes, you were not amazed. This Van Helsing's kind of a drip. He was amazed, horrified when I let Arthur kiss his love. Isn't this Arthur? Isn't he talking to Arthur? No, he's talking to John. Why is Arthur? Oh, yeah, John, whatever. Oh, John, okay. Arthur's gonna marry her. John loved her previously. That's what it was. Anyway, yeah, blah. I'm doing it for right reasons. Well, I have good reason for now all I want to do. You have for many years trust me. You have believed me weeks past. When there be things so strange that you may have well doubt, believe me yet a little, friend John. This is just, friend John, there are strange and terrible days before us. Let us not be two, but one, so that we were, yeah, anyway. Work for me. I know that this is creepy, that I want to cut. Hey, listen, I can totally see where you're coming from. Being a little bugged out that I want to lop off your ex-gal's head. But trust me, now we're back to John. I took his hand and promised him. I held my door open as he went away and watched him go into his room and close the door. As I stood without moving, I saw one of the maids pass silently along the passage. She had her back towards me, so did not see me, and go into the room where Lucy lay. The sight touched me. Devotion is so rare, and we are so grateful to those who show it untasked to those we love. Also about to cut off my ex-girlfriend's head. Here was a poor girl putting aside the terrors which she naturally had of death to go watch alone by the bier of the mistress whom she loved, so that the poor clay might not be lonely till laid to eternal rest. I must have slept long and soundly, for it was broad daylight when Van Helsing waked me by coming into my room. He came over to my bedside and said, "You need not trouble about the knives. I shall not do it." Why not? I asked. Wait, how about thanks? Why not? Why aren't you going to cut my ex-girlfriend's head off? For his solemnity of the night before had greatly impressed me. Because, he said sternly, it is too late or too early. See? Here he held up The little golden crucifix. This was stolen in the night. How stolen? I asked in wonder, since you have it now. Because I get it back from the worthless wretch who stole it, from the woman who robbed the dead and the living. Her punishment will surely come, but not through me. She knew not altogether what she did, and thus unknowing she only stole. Now we must wait. He went away on the word, leaving me with a new mystery to think of, a new puzzle to grapple with. The forenoon was a dreary time, but at noon the solicitor came, Mr. Marquand of Holman, Sons Marquand and Litterdale. He was very genial and very appreciative of what we had done, and took off our hands all cares as to details. During lunch he told us that Mrs. Westenra had for some time expected sudden death from her heart, and had put her affairs in absolute order. He informed us that, with the exception of a certain entailed property of Lucy's father's, which now, in default and of direct issue, went back to a distant branch of the family. Distant branch of the family means vampires. The whole estate, real and personal, was left absolutely to Arthur Holmwood. The fucking dude got it. When he had told us so much, he went on. Frankly, we did our best to prevent such a testamentary disposition, and pointed out certain contingencies that may leave her daughter either penniless or not so free as she should be to act regarding a matrimonial alliance. Indeed, we pressed the matter so far that we almost came into collision, for she asked us if we were or were not prepared to carry out her wishes. Of course, we had then no alternative but to accept. We were right in principle. This sounds like a southern. We were right in principle, and 99 times out of 100 we should have proved by the logic of events the accuracy of our own judgment. Frankly, however, I must admit that in this case any other form of disposition would have rendered impossible the carrying out of her wishes. For by her predeceasing her daughter, the latter would have come into possession of the property, and, even had she only survived her mother by 5 minutes, her property would, in case there will no will, and a will was a practical impossibility in such a case, have been treated at her decease as under intestacy, in which case Lord Godalming, though so dear a friend, would have had no claim in the world, and the inheritors, being remote, would not be likely to abandon their just right for sentimental reasons regarding an entire stranger. I assure you, my dear sirs, I am rejoiced at the result. Perfectly rejoiced. That's how that was fucking written. You're telling me that a guy who was about to assist in his girlfriend's head getting cut off post-mortem and just found out, don't worry, we're not gonna, hey, you know what, actually I don't need to cut off your ex-girlfriend's head in front of you and have you help. Are you making sure you're making a diary every night? Could you make it so accurate down to the punctuation that the accent's hard not to do? Vampires make more sense in the South anyway. Because, oh, I'm a vampire. Like, they party and shit. That makes more sense. They sound like, just like bros. Anyway, this lawyer is actually absolutely from Louisiana, even though this is London in the whenever hundreds. He was a good fellow, but his rejoicing at the one little part in which he was officially interested of so great a tragedy was an objection lesson in limitations of sympathetic understanding. All right. He did not remain long, but said he would look in later in the day and come and see Lord Godalming. His coming, however, had been a certain comfort to us, since it assured us that we should not have to dread hostile criticism as to any of our acts. Arthur was expected at 5 o'clock, so a little before that time we visited the death chamber. It was so in very truth, for now both mother and daughter lay in it. The undertaker, true to his craft, had made the best display he could of his goods, and there was a mortuary air about the place that lowered our spirits at once. Van Helsing ordered the former arrangements to be adhered to, explaining that, as Lord Godalming was coming very soon, it would be less harrowing to his feelings to see all that was left of his fiancée quite alone. The undertaker seemed shocked at his own stupidity and exited himself to restore things to the condition in which we left them the night before, so that when Arthur came, such shocks to his feelings as we could avoid were saved. So what, they didn't cut her head off and shit? Poor fellow, he looked desperately sad and broken. Even his stalwart manhood seemed to have shrunk somewhat under the strain of his much tired emotions. He had, I knew, been very genuinely and devotedly attached to his father, and to lose him, and at such a time, was a bitter blow to him. With me he was warm as ever, and to Van Helsing he was sweetly courteous, but I could not help seeing that there was some constraint with him. The professor noticed it too, and motioned me to bring him upstairs. I did so, and left him at the door of the room, as I felt he would like to be quite alone with her. But he took my arm and led me in, saying huskily, "You loved her too, old fellow. She told me all about it, and there was no friend had a closer place in her heart than you. I don't know how to thank you for all you've done for her. I can't think it." This dude's fiancé died. Well, his dad died. Well, her mom died. Oh. Here he suddenly broke down, threw his arms around my shoulders, and laid his head on my breast, crying, "Oh, Jack, Jack, what shall I do? The whole of life seems gone from me at once, and there's nothing in the wide world for me to live for." I think you dudes should kiss, that's what I think. I comforted him as well as I could. In such cases, men do not need much expression. A grip of the hand, a tightening of an arm over the shoulder. That's dude shit, yep. A sob in unison. A sob in unison. I saw a sob in unison open for cursive at the Metro back in 2004. Are expressions of sympathy dear to a man's heart. I stood that was a good joke. I stood still and silently I stood still and silent till. I stood still and silent till his sobs died away. And then I said softly to him, "Come and look at her." Together we moved over to the bed, and I lifted the lawn from her face. This is killing me. Let me get that lawn off your face. What? Hey, you got a little lawn on your face there. Sounds like somebody's just filthy. Ah, shit, I got some lawn on my face. I'm bad at sports. I got a bunch of lawn on my face. This fucking book. Together we moved over to the bed, and I lifted the lawn from her face. God, how beautiful she was! Every hour seemed to be enhancing her loveliness. It frightened and amazed me somewhat. It should, if she was getting hotter now that she was dead. You fucking sicko. Come on. Oh, man, I totally got a boner at this funeral. I'm a little weirded out right now. You should be, you goddamn creep. It frightened and amazed me somewhat. No, all the way what? Not somewhat. And as for Arthur, he fell a-trembling, and finally was shaken with doubt, as with an ague. A-G-U-E. At last, after a long pause, he said to me in a faint whisper, "Jack, is she really dead? Fucking bet your ass, we cut this bitch's head off last night." I assured him sadly that it was so, and went on to suggest, for I felt that such a horrible doubt should not have life for a moment longer than I could help. That it often happened that after death faces became softened and even resolved into their youthful beauty. That this was especially so when death had been preceded by any acute or prolonged suffering. Oh yeah, if you've been beaten down for months, I'm sure right after you die, you look like a real daisy. It seemed to quite do away with any doubt, and after kneeling beside the couch for a while, looking at her lovingly and long, he turned aside. I told him that must be goodbye, as the coffin had to be prepared. So we went back and took her dead hand in his and kissed it, bent over and kissed her forehead. He came away, and finally looking back over his shoulder as he came. Imagine coming so hard you gotta look away from your own dick. Oh God, oh Jesus, it's so much. Oh, I can't. What's happening to my body? This book's really bad. I left him in the drawing room and told Van Helsing that he had said goodbye. So the latter went to the kitchen to tell the undertaker's men to proceed with the preparations and to screw up the coffin. When he came out of the room again, I told him of Arthur's question, and he replied, I am not surprised. Just now I doubted myself for a moment. We all dined together, and I could see that poor Art was trying to make the best of things. Van Helsing had been silent all dinner time, but when we had lit our cigars, he said, Lord. But Arthur interrupted him. No, not that, for God's sake. Not yet, at any rate. Forgive me, sir. I did not mean to speak offensively. It is only because my loss is so recent. The professor answered very sweetly. I only used that name because I was in doubt. I must not call you mister, and I have grown to love you. Yes, my dear boy, to love you as Arthur. Arthur held out his hand and took the old man's warmly. Call me what you will, he said. I hope I may always have the title of a friend. And let me say that I am at a loss for words to thank you for your goodness to my poor dear. He paused a moment and went on. I know that she understood your goodness even better than I do. And if I was rude or in any way wanting at that time you acted, you remember. The professor nodded. You must forgive me. He answered with a grave kindness. I know it was hard for you to quite trust me then, for to trust such violence needs to understand. And I take it that you do not, this is Van Helsing talking, that you cannot trust me now, for you do not yet understand, and there may be more times when I shall want you to trust when you cannot and may not, and you must not yet understand. But the time will come when your trust shall be whole and complete in me, and when you shall understand as though the sunlight himself shall... Fuck, I'm just skipping every chapter this fucking guy barfs about. Guy serves up a lot of bread sandwiches, no meat. And indeed, sir, said Arthur warmly, I shall always trust you and know and believe you have a very noble heart, and you are Jack's friend, and you are hers. And you shall do what you like. Hold on, man. You trust me, I trust you, blah, blah, blah. Then the professor cleared his throat a couple times, as though about to speak, and finally said, May I ask you something? Certainly. You know that Miss Westenra left you all her property. No, poor dear, I never thought of it. And as it is all yours, you have a right to deal with it as you will. I want you to give me permission to read all Miss Lucy's papers and letters. Believe me, it's no idle curiosity. I have a motive of which, be sure, she would have approved. I have them all here. I took them before we knew that it was all yours, so no strange hands might touch them. No strange eye look through words into her soul. I shall keep them, if I may, and you may not see them. Even you may not see them yet. But I shall keep them safe. No word shall be lost, and in good time shall give them back to you. It's a hard thing I ask, but you will do it? Will you not, for Lucy's sake? Arthur spoke out heartily, like his old self. Dr. Van Helsing, you may do what you will. I feel that in saying this, I am doing what my dear one would have approved. I shall not trouble you with questions till the time comes. The old professor stood up as he said solemnly, and you are right. There will be pain for us all, but it will not be all pain. Nor will this be pain, be brave with pain. I slept on a sofa in Arthur's room that night. Van Helsing did not go to bed at all. He went to and fro as if patrolling the house. He was never out of sight of the room where Lucy lay in her coffin, strewn with wild garlic flowers which sent, through the odor of lily and rose, a heavy overpowering smell into the night. Mina Harker's journal. September 22nd. In the train to Exeter, Jonathan sleeping. It seems only yesterday that the last entry was made, and yet how much between then, in Whitby, and all the world before me. Jonathan away and no news of him, and now married to Jonathan. Jonathan a solicitor, a partner, rich, master of his business. Mr. Hawkins dead and buried, and Jonathan with another attack that may harm him. Some day he may ask me about it. Down it all goes. I am rusty in my shorthand. I wish you weren't. I mean, see what unexpected prosperity does for us. So it may be as well to freshen up again with an exercise anyhow. The service was very simple and very solemn. There were only ourselves and the servants there, and one or two old friends from his Exeter, his London agent, and gentleman representing Sir John Paxton, the president of the Incorporated Law Society. Jonathan and I stood hand in hand. We felt that our best and dearest friend was gone from us. We came back to town quietly, taking a bus to Hyde Park Corner. Jonathan thought it would interest me to go into the Row for a while, so we sat down, but there were very few people, and it was sad-looking and desolate to see so many empty chairs. It made us think of the empty chair dance at home, so we got up and walked down Piccadilly. Jonathan was holding me by the arm, the way he used to in the old days, before I went to school. I felt it very improper, for you can't go on for some years teaching etiquette and decorum to other girls without the pedantry of it biting into yourself a bit. But it was Jonathan, and he was my husband, and we didn't know anybody who saw us. Ooh, he held me by my arm. And we didn't care if they did, so on we walked, you rascals. I was looking at a very beautiful girl in a big cartwheel hat sitting in a Victoria outside Giuliano's when I felt Jonathan grab my arm tight. He said, "My God, I am always anxious about Jonathan, for I fear that some nervous fit may upset him again." So I turned to him quickly and he asked him what bothered him. He was very pale, his eyes seemed bulging out, half in terror, half in amazement. He gazed at a tall, thin man with a beaky nose and a black mustache and a pointed beard. I was also observing the pretty girl. He was looking at her so hard that he did not see either of us, and so I had a good view of him. His face was not a good face. It was hard and cruel and sensual, and his big white teeth that looked all the white because his lips were so red, pointed like an animal. It's Dracula. We get it, it's Dracula. I asked Jonathan why he was disturbed. He answered, evidently thinking that I knew as much about he did. "Do you see who it is?" "No, dear," I said. "I do not know him. Who is it?" His answer seemed to shock and thrill me, for he said as if I did not know, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it is the man himself. The poor dear was evidently terrified at something. Very greatly terrified. I do believe that if he had not had me to lean on and to support him, he would have sunk down. He kept staring. A man came out of the shop with a small parcel. I almost said pretzel. And he gave it to the lady, who then drove off. The dark man kept his eyes fixed on her. When the carriage moved up Piccadilly, he followed in the same direction and hailed a hansom. Jonathan kept looking after him and said to himself, "I believe it is the Count, but he has grown young. My God, if this be so! Oh, my God, if I only knew, if I only knew!" He was distressing himself so much that I feared to keep his mind on the subject by asking him questions, so I remained silent. I drew him away quietly, and he, holding my arm, came easily. We walked a little further and then went in and sat for a while in the Green Park. It was a hot day for autumn, and there was a comfortable seat in a shady place. After a few minutes staring at nothing, Jonathan's eyes closed, and he went quietly into a sleep, with his head on my shoulder. I thought it was the best thing for him, so did not disturb him. In about 20 minutes he woke up, and said to me quite cheerfully, "Why, Mina, I have been asleep." Have I been asleep? "Oh, do forgive me for being so rude. Come, and we'll have a cup of tea somewhere." This motherfucker's English. He had evidently forgotten all about the dark stranger, as in his illness he had forgotten all about all that this episode had reminded him of. I don't think this lapsing into forgetfulness, it may or make or continue some injury to the brain. I must not ask him, for fear I shall do more harm than good, but I must somehow learn the facts of his journey abroad. This time has come, I fear, when I must open the parcel and know what is written. Oh, Jonathan, you will later, a sad homecoming in every way. The house empty of the dear soul who was so good to us. Jonathan, still pale and dizzy under a slight relapse of his malady, and now a telegram from Van Helsing, whoever he may be, which means a bunch of bullshit. You will be grieved to hear that Mrs. Westenra died 5 days ago and that Lucy died the day before yesterday. They were both buried today. Oh, what a wealth of sorrow and a few words. Poor Mrs. Westenra, poor Lucy, gone, never to return to us. And poor Arthur, to have lost such a sweetness out of his life. God help us all. Dr. Seward's diary, September 22nd. Dr. Seward's diary. It's all over. Arthur has gone back to Ring and has taken Quincy Morris with him. What a fine fellow is Quincy. I believe in my heart of hearts that he suffered as much about Lucy's death as any of us, but he bore himself through like a moral Viking. If America can go on breeding men like that, she will be a power in the world indeed. Van Helsing is lying down, having a rest preparatory to his journey. He goes over to Amsterdam tonight, but says he returns tomorrow night, that he only wants to make some arrangements which can only be made personally. He is to stop with me then, if he can. He says he has work to do in London, which may take him some time. Poor old fellow, I fear that the strain of the past week has broken down even his own iron strength. All the time of the burial I could see putting some terrible restraint on himself. When it was all over, we were standing beside Arthur, who, poor fellow, was speaking of his part in the operation where his blood had been transfused into Lucy's veins. I could see Van Helsing's face grow white and purple by turns. Arthur was saying that he felt as if they two had been really married and that she was his wife in the sight of God. None of us said a word of other operations, and none of us ever shall, because they all like blood fucked her, you know? Because what really is a transfusion other than straight up blood fucking somebody? Arthur and Quincy went away together to the station, and Van Helsing and I came on here. There were moments we were alone in the carriage, and he gave way to a regular fit of hysterics. He has denied to me since that it was hysterics, and insisted it was only his sense of humor asserting itself under very terrible conditions. He laughed till he cried, and I had to draw down the blinds lest anyone should see us and misjudge. And then he cried until he laughed again, and laughed, and we laughed and cried together, just as a woman does. I tried to be stern with him as one is to a woman under the circumstances, but it had no effect. Men and women are so different in manifestations of nervous strength or weakness. Classic. Then, when his face grew grave and stern again, I asked him why his mirth and why at such a time. His reply was in a way characteristic of him, for his logical and forceful and mysterious. He said, you don't comprehend, friend John. Do not think that I am not sad, though I laugh. See, I have cried even though when the laugh did choke me. But no more think I am sorry when I cry. No, he laughs, he cries, he laughs, he cries. Why does he laugh and he cry? Behold an example. I grieve my heart out for that so sweet young girl. I give my blood for her. Though I am worn and old, I give my time, my skill, my sleep. I let others sufferers want that so she may have health, and yet I can laugh at her very grave. Laugh when the clay from the spade of the sexton drop upon her coffin, and say thud thud to my heart till it send back the blood from my cheek. My heart bleed for that poor boy, that dear boy, so of the age of mine own boy, had I been blessed. So he's there, bleeding hearts and dry bones of the churchyard, and tears And believe me, my friend John, that he is good to come and kind. We men and women are like the ropes drawn tight with string that pulls us different ways. Then the tears come, and like the rain on the ropes, they brace us up until... I did not like to wound him by pretending not to see his idea, but as I did not yet understand the cause of his laughter, I asked him. He answered me, his face grew stern. He said, quite a different tone. Oh, it was the grim irony of it all. Oh, it's irony. He was laughing at irony. This so lovely lady, garlanded with flowers that looked so fair as life, till one by one we wondered if she were truly dead. And she lay in that so fine marble house in that lonely churchyard, where rest so many of her kin, laid there with the mother who loved her, with whom she loved, and the sacred bell going toll, 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 so sad and slow, and those holy men with the white garments of the angel pretending to read books, and yet all the time their eyes never on the page, all of us with the bowed head, and for what? She's dead, so it is not, is it not? Well, for the life of me, Professor, I said, I can't see anything to laugh at and all that. Why, your explanation makes it a harder puzzle than before, but why? But even if the burial service was comic, what about poor Art and his trouble? Why, his heart was simply breaking. Just so. Said he not that the transfusion of his blood to her veins had made her truly his bride? Yes, and it was a sweet and comforting idea for him. Quite so. But there was a difficulty, friend John. If so then what about the others? Ho, ho! Then this so sweet maid is a polyandress, and me, with my poor wife dead to me, but alive by church's law, though no wits, all gone. Even I, who am faithful husband to his now no wife, am a bigamist. Blood fucking. I'm talking about blood fucking. I don't see where the joke comes in here either, I said, and I did not feel particularly pleased with him for saying such things. He laid his hand on my arm and said, Friend John, forgive me if I pain. I showed not my feeling to others when it would wound, but only to you, my old friend, whom I can trust. If you could have looked into my very heart, and then, when I want to laugh, if you could have done so when the laugh arrived, you could do so now. When King Laugh have packed up his crown. This fucking idiot. I was touched by the tenderness of his tone and asked why. Because I know that now we are all scattered, and for many long day loneliness we'll sit over our roofs with brooding wings. Lucy lies in the tomb of her kin, a lordly death house in a lonely churchyard, away from teeming London, where the air is fresh and the sun rises over Hampstead Hill, and where the wildflowers grow of their own accord. So I can finish this diary, and God only knows if I shall ever begin another. If I do, or if I even open this again, it'll be with a great deal of different people, different themes. For here at the end, where the romance of my life is told, ere I go back to take up the thread of my life work, I say sadly and without hope, finis. All right, home stretch. The Westminster Gazette, 25th of September, a Hampstead mystery. The neighborhood of Hampstead is just at present exercised with a series of events which seems to run on lines parallel to those of what was known to the writers of headlines as the Kensington Whore, or the Stabbing Woman, or the Woman in Black. During the past 2 or 3 days, several cases have occurred of young children straying from home or neglecting to return from their playing on the heath. In all these cases, the children are too young to give any properly intelligible account of themselves. But the consensus of their excuses is that they had been with a Bloofer Lady. It has always been late in the evening when they have been missed, and on 2 occasions the children have not been found until early in the following morning. It is generally supposed in the neighborhood that, as the first child missed gave as his reason for being away that a Bloofer Lady had asked him to come for a walk, and others had picked up the phrase and used it as occasion served. This is the more natural, as the favorite game of the little ones at present is luring each other away by wiles. A correspondent writes us that to see some of the tiny tots pretending to be the Bloofer Lady is supremely funny. Some of our caricaturists might, he says, take a lesson in the irony of grotesque by comparing the reality and the picture. It is only in accordance with the general principles of human nature that the Bloofer Lady should be the popular role at these al fresco performances. Our correspondent naively says that even Ellen Terry could not be so winningly attractive as some of these grubby-faced little children pretend, and even imagine themselves to be. There is, however, possibly a serious side of the question. For some of the children, indeed all who have been missed at night, have been slightly torn or wounded in the throat. Oh, vampire children! The wounds seem such as might be made by a rat or a small dog. What the fuck? Right out there. I had my flashlight on one, or just straight up chilled with a rat. And although of not much importance individually, would tend to show that whatever animal inflicts them has a system or method of its own. The police of the division have been instructed to keep a sharp lookout for straying children, especially when very young, in and around Hampstead Heath, and for any stray dog which may be about. The Westminster Gazette, 25th September, extra special, the Hampstead Horror, another child injured, the Bloofer Lady. We have just received intelligence that another child, missed last night, was only discovered late in the morning under a furze bush at the Shooter's Hill side of Hampstead Heath, which is, perhaps, less frequented than the other parts. It has the same tiny wound in the throat as has been noticed in other cases. It was terribly weak and looked quite emaciated. It, too, when partially restored, and the common story to tell of being lured away by the Bloofer Lady. Chapter 13. 90% trash. 10%. They close it good. They closed it. 13 ended well. First paragraph, excellent. Last section, great. Red sandwich. Alright. I'm gonna have to start getting reading glasses for this. This is making me nuts.